And they were like, hey, we're your users. We just wanted to, and they gave us like a couple of bottles of beer. Like, this is from our brewery. We just wanted to thank you because thanks to Firefish, we didn't have to sell our Bitcoin. We were able to finish our house, because the bank didn't want to give us any more credit and all that, right? So there are real use cases. Another guy who is paid in Bitcoin, right? He's a developer and his income is in Bitcoin. And to fund his real life needs, right? Buy a car or, go for holidays with the family, he needed fiat, right? So instead of selling Bitcoin, he was like, well, actually now, thanks to you Firefish guys, I'm funding my life. I'm taking loans, and never selling my Bitcoin, right? So the whole point is, if you have funding needs, if you need some money and your only option is to sell your Bitcoin, really consider looking at Bitcoin-backed loans because that could be a very, very good tool.
Hello, this is the Bitcoin Libertarian. Our guest today is Egor Newman, co-founder and COO of Firefish, the open non-custodial marketplace for Bitcoin-backed loans. Firefish lets Bitcoin holders borrow fiat or stablecoins using their BTC as collateral, held securely in multi-sig escrow while connecting borrowers directly with lenders worldwide. No centralized custodian deciding rates, no forced sales during volatility if managed right, and built with Bitcoin native principles at its core. Igor brings years of experience in banking and capital markets to the table, and together with co-founder Martin Matejka, they've grown Firefish to serve thousands of users, process significant volume, and recently raised 1.8 million in seed funding from backers like Brains and Milton. Today, we are talking about one of the most practical ways Bitcoiners can unlock liquidity without ever selling their sats. Igor, welcome.
Thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive intro, and thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming. I hosted Law School in Spanish, and now I wanted to host him again because I know that there are some changes in the platform, and I want to share it with my Spanish community, but it's the first time I host Firefish, and I think that it's my first ever podcast with someone talking about Bitcoin-backed lending loans in English. So welcome to
excellent
to our channel. And the first question is, how were you orange pilled?
How was I orange pilled? Well, honestly speaking, I got into Bitcoin maybe in 2014, 15, right? So I used to work in finance, so naturally, and before that I was actually a trader, right? So for me, there was suddenly a new asset that you could almost a commodity that you could trade 24/7. There was enough volume or liquidity. It was volatile enough, right? So it was good for trading. So that's how I actually got into Bitcoin, first from really just observing, how it behaves as a commodity in a way. And then later, the moment when I was actually forced or when I really jumped into Bitcoin was, I think it was in 2015, mid-year. One of my colleagues in the previous work, he came to us. He was doing a presentation about blockchains, oracles and things like that, or from the technical perspective. And he said hey guys, just buy Bitcoin and you will see how it changes your life, right? And I was like, yeah, that sounds kind of blah, blah, esoteric, whatever, comment. But at the same time, I told myself, look, even I had this mindset, let me actually, for the first time in my life, listen to someone and accept their offer or their recommendation, basically. So I decided to buy Bitcoin, and the rest is actually history, right? So first, as I mentioned, I was interested in Bitcoin as a trading basically commodity. But once you start digging and you start falling into the rabbit hole, suddenly I realize that Bitcoin is much more than just a trading vehicle. That it's something very, very, really unique. And later on, I think the breaking point for me, when I really understood what Bitcoin actually stands for was when I used to live. So I used to live and work in Russia, and when the war started, actually with Ukraine, I was a citizen of a foreign country, and all my assets got frozen. Right, so I couldn't do any bank transfers, I couldn't do any international transfers. So I was trying to figure out, and when I was leaving Russia, I was trying to figure out, how to actually even move my money or move my basically assets that I had there. And then suddenly I realized like, hey, actually, there's one thing that no one can actually block, right? No one can steal from you, no one can take from you. So then I started really digging more into, Bitcoin. I also had the opportunity maybe to do some transfers in stablecoins, but also like if the stablecoins are kind of tainted and they're, coming from some sanctioned exchange, let's say that could be a threat. So in that moment, that was the aha moment for me. Like, hey, actually, Bitcoin is the real freedom, real liberty, is the one only asset that no one can take from you. And that was really for me the aha moment, and I really started digging much more into Bitcoin, the technology behind, and then of course you explore the philosophy, economy behind, and all that. So to cut the story short, I came as a trader, but ultimately I really understood what Bitcoin stands for.
Excellent. And I know that the team in Firefish are true Bitcoiners. So let me know how and why did you start Firefish?
So this was actually also roughly at that time. I was talking to Martin, my co-founder, and as always, the best ideas come, are basically pushed to you through life situations, right? So actually, Martin had an investment opportunity, like to invest some money into business, but at that time he didn't have the liquidity, he didn't have assets that he could actually just kind of invest in that business. So as a Bitcoiner, one of the options for him was selling Bitcoin and then investing into the business, or, which obviously he didn't want to because he really, believes in Bitcoin in the long term. The other option was borrowing against Bitcoin, right? Because just like in traditional finance, the best assets that you believe in, that you want to hold forever, you basically never sell them, right? So just like the wealthy people, rich people, they never sell their real estate, their art pieces, their stocks, bonds, whatever they're holding. So instead of that, you use it as a collateral and get a loan against it, right? So at that time, that was the period of BlockFi, Celsius, FTX, and all that. So we all know how it all ended up. So Martin, obviously, also coming from finance, he wasn't very sure that he wants to send his Bitcoin to some random dude who just put a Bitcoin sticker on some platform. And, we call this the trust me bro model, right? When you send Bitcoin to someone and then just hope that you're going to get the Bitcoin later, which many people didn't after the collapse of these platforms. So we were actually talking at that time, and we were basically trying to find out a better way for Bitcoiners to never sell their Bitcoin, because if you sell it, first, you lose the upside. Second, you, of course, usually would need to pay maybe income tax or whatever. So we were trying to find a better way how to help Bitcoiners basically to facilitate the collateralization of Bitcoin in a very secure way, right? So that's how we started Firefish. We wanted to remove as many risks as possible. We didn't want to create another Trust Me Bro platform where you send Bitcoin to someone and then, you get the money, but then, if something goes wrong, you are basically stuck and you will never see your Bitcoin again. So that was the whole kind of logic behind, and the whole motivation, like, let's create a platform that is fair, that is transparent, that is secure, and is also a market-driven platform, right? So most of the centralized lenders would be quoting you, interest rates because, they would be funding you from their balance sheet. We were like, let's open it up. Let's create a platform that actually connects borrowers and lenders, and the market will decide what the fair interest rate is, right? So that's basically how Firefish started.
Excellent. And tell us the process of Firefish. How does Firefish work?
So in simple terms, as I mentioned, it's a marketplace, right? So you have two sides. You have borrowers and lenders. Borrowers are people who have Bitcoin, who don't want to sell their Bitcoin, but they have some funding needs, right? So they need liquidity, they need either fiat cash or they need stable coins for whatever purposes, buying more Bitcoin, which is very popular, or investing, as I mentioned, into business, covering costs, going for holidays and stuff like that. So the whole purpose is that Bitcoiners, are the borrowers who need some money, but they don't want to sell their Bitcoin, right? And then on the other side, you have the lenders or investors. So those are people who are sitting on some fiat or some stable coins, and they want to earn some yield, right? So basically, Firefish is connecting borrowers with lenders. Lenders earn particular interest rates on those loans. The important point is that these loans are over collateralized, right? So there's always more Bitcoin than the actual loan, right? So if I want to borrow, let's say $1,000, I need to deposit 2,000 worth of Bitcoin, right? Because we know that there's a price volatility and all that. So the investor is always covered. And the other very important element, as I outlined at the beginning, is that we are a non-custodial platform, right? So that means borrowers are not sending Bitcoin to us. We have created something what we call Firefish protocol. Firefish protocol is basically on-chain, layer 1, Bitcoin native kind of scripts. It's a combination of multi-sig, partially signed transactions, and time locks. So no hocus pocus, no kind of esoteric technology behind. So all Bitcoin native. And the borrower basically, they lock their Bitcoin on chain. So they create what we call an escrow address. So you send your Bitcoin to the escrow address. And from that escrow address, your Bitcoin can only move either back to you as the borrower when you repay the loan, or if you do not repay the loan or the price collapses by more than, let's say, 50%, then it goes to the liquidator, right? So you as the borrower at the very beginning are actually limiting what can happen with your Bitcoin. So that's why you're pre-signing the transactions that you accept. And that basically means that really Bitcoin can go only back to you or then to the liquidator. Now, also the important point is we are fully open source, right? So the code you can actually check on our GitHub. You can, you don't have to. We don't want you to trust us, actually, right? We want you to do your own research. So that's the whole principle, basically.
And walk us through the whole process. Imagine I have Bitcoin, I need money because I want to invest. Or now in the bear market, I want to buy more Bitcoin and I don't have more money. So how is the whole process since I arrive to the platform and get my money?
So the process is rather simple, and also the very, I would say, unique feature of the platform is that, as I mentioned, the interest rates are not set by Firefish; they are set actually by the market, or in this particular case, by the borrowers. So now, in your example, bear market, great time to buy more Bitcoin. So you go to the platform and say, okay, I want to borrow, let's say, 10,000 USDC or euros or Swiss franc, whatever. So you go to the platform and create a request where you specify the loan duration from 3 months to 2 years, let's say. You say how much money you want to borrow. And once you submit this request to the marketplace, you need to wait for an investor to actually take your request from the marketplace, right? So there's some time that you might need to wait. Of course, if you put the interest rate too low and there are, other offers in the marketplace that are higher, then you might need to wait a little longer. So it's always good to check, what are the current interest rates. Or you as the borrower, you have also another alternative. It's what we call instant loans. If you need the money tomorrow or even today, there's an invest or actually instant loan feature where you just click, accept the terms, and you can go to the borrowing process. So once you send the request, the next step, and then you're matched with the investor or you take the instant loan, the second step is basically locking your Bitcoin, right? And locking your Bitcoin is super simple, basically process. You will see the address where you are supposed to send your Bitcoin and a QR code, and it shows you how much of the Bitcoin you need to send. So once you send your Bitcoin to that particular address, and as I mentioned, from that address, your Bitcoin can only move either back to you or to the liquidator. Once Bitcoin is locked, the investor on the other side, the lender, gets a notification, and then they will transfer the proceeds, the funds, basically to you, right? So the process is really very simple. The beauty of it is also we wanted to build a platform in a way that we do understand that there's a lot of money, out there in traditional finance, or even regular people who are sitting on bank deposits that are earning 0.5% per annum. So we wanted to enable non-coiners, non-Bitcoiners also to participate in the platform. So you as the investor, as the lender, you do not have to be Bitcoin native, right? So we have a lot of people that never held Bitcoin. They don't have Bitcoin wallets, but they are actually funding Bitcoin-backed loans, right? So even for them, we're making Bitcoin useful because they're earning better yield than, for example, in a bank deposit, right? So once you get the money, of course, let's say you borrowed for one year. 1 year later, you can repay the loan, or you can even repay earlier, right? So once you send your Bitcoin, once you repay the loan, and the investor confirms that, yes, I have received my investment, then your Bitcoin is automatically unlocked and sent back to your return address. So that's the process basically.
And how does the interest is determined? For example, if I want to get money, I say, okay, I want 10,000 US dollars and I will pay X amount of yearly interest. On the other side, the person who puts money, fiat, also can determine the interest they want.
So we did it actually the other way around. Normally, it's like people are offering money at a particular interest rate. We wanted Bitcoiners actually to say, how much they're willing actually to pay, right? So you as the Bitcoiner, it's sometimes in the finance terminology, it's called one-sided order book, right? So you see all the requests from the borrowers, from Bitcoiners who say, I want to borrow for, let's say, 6 months at 6%, right? So you as the borrower are posting your request into the marketplace, and investors get notifications if they like your proposition. Let's say, yeah, I have free money for 6 months, for 3 months, for 1 year, and I like 6% because it's better than my 0.5% in the bank. Then they can accept your request, right? So it's basically driven by the borrowers and the marketplace, because obviously we have thousands of borrowers on the platform, so people are competing. But the good thing is that with time, I mean, we've already processed around 6,500 Bitcoin as the collateral, more than 220 million in loans. So the more you kind of process, the more liquidity you get to the platform. And that's why the interest rates are falling down, right? So for example, today, if you want to borrow euros for 3 months, you would need to pay like roughly 5%, right? Which is really, I would say pretty attractive. So historically, as when we started the platform, the interest rates were rather high because there was not enough liquidity. But now with the traction, all the rates have been falling continuously.
Excellent. And talking about the terms on payment. So me as a Bitcoiner, I can say, okay, I want money for 1 year. I will pay this interest. I have to make payments every month, or I have to pay all at the end, or I can choose the frequency of the payments.
I mean, we also wanted to make it very simple. So, and no one loves paying interest on monthly basis, right? So basically, if you take 1 year loan, you just pay the full amount at the very end, right? It's called a bullet loan, literally no monthly payments, no quarterly payments. I think the beauty of it is that you can actually plan well in advance your cash flow. You know how much you will need to pay in 1 year or in 2 years, right? So you can prepare for that, or you can even roll over the loan, right? Take another loan, repay the previous one, and carry on like this, right? So it's only a bullet loan, and it really makes the life for people very easy.
I wanted to ask about that, to roll over the loan, as I know that the contracts, and you are not rehypothecating the Bitcoin. So
yes,
basically the contract has an expiration date and needs to be settled by this expiration date. To roll over, I need to put new Bitcoin as a collateral, or I can use the Bitcoin that is already there and do some financial movement in the background.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and really, I mean, first and foremost, yes, there's no rehypothecation, so we actually can't move Bitcoin to a different address or anything like that, right? If I don't know, your tax office comes to us, we are not able to send your Bitcoin to them, so that really brings a lot of or a different level of security actually to the platform. Now that also brings the sort of limited experience when it comes to rollovers, right? So as you said, there's a contract that expires. And in order to roll over, in order to, let's say, I take a loan for 1 year and I want to roll it over to another year, I would need to create a new loan request, right? So get a new loan, use a different stack of Bitcoin, and then repay the previous one, right? So that's currently the downside of the platform, that you can't do like a natural rollover. And also, as it's a peer-to-peer marketplace, imagine that the investor, the lender would say, no, I want my money right now, right? So we would need to find another person on that. Having said that, very soon this year, we're going to be launching a native rollover, right? So once you lock your Bitcoin, you will be also able to use the same escrow contract for a native rollover, right? So we found a way how to make this much more easier. But in a regular, currently in the peer-to-peer model, you would need to lock additional Bitcoin, get a new loan, use the proceeds to repay the previous one, and close the first loan, basically.
Excellent. And the process, I assume that as you can get paid through stable coins, and also some regions it's possible to get the transfer to your bank, right?
Yes. So stablecoins are basically USDC or USDT are available globally, right? So even if you're from Hong Kong, you can get a match with someone from Argentina. You have a peer-to-peer loan, you will get the stablecoins from that person. But we do also support fiat currencies. That's what we started with, actually, because there's been, there are a number of options, to be fairly honest, on the DeFi, like where you can actually wrap your Bitcoin and get a loan in stable coins and, things like that. But again, then you're facing the protocol risk, you're basically not Bitcoin native, your Bitcoin actually goes somewhere else. So that's why we started with fiat. So especially Europeans, for Europeans, we support euros, Swiss franc, Polish zloty, Czech koruna as well, right? So we are kind of expanding the currency supported. Obviously, it wouldn't make sense for us to add all the currencies in the world because the market would be very small, right? So if, I don't know, if we enabled Mexican pesos, then maybe we wouldn't have enough borrowers and lenders for Mexican peso, right? So we started with the bigger currencies. Also, very soon, we're going to be launching US dollars, native dollars, right? We started with dollars actually very early, but as we started in Europe, it's very painful to send dollars inside of Europe, because if I want to send, for example, dollars from Czech Republic to Hungary, it goes through the US banks, they take cards, it takes like a week or two, the money usually gets stuck somewhere, there's a lot of questions. So we were like, okay, let's let's drop it, or let's pause it for some time. But very soon we're gonna have a different way of distributing US dollars, right? So we're gonna be supporting them soon.
And I assume that if the process involves banks, the process is KYC.
Yes, I mean, for fiat, unfortunately, you can't avoid that, because then banks would basically ask too many questions, or they would be blocking the transactions and all that. So for basically fiat currencies, if you want to get a euro loan, for example, you would need to do the KYC process. Yes.
And if I want, for example, stable coins, I need also go through the KYC, or I can avoid that?
At this point in time, you would have to, but this is something we're looking into, because we are now regulated entity inside of European Union, right? So we need to comply with all the MiCA rules and things like that, which includes KYC and AML regulations. So at this point in time, if you want to transact in any currency, you would need to do the KYC, but we're exploring paths on how to basically enable potentially non-KYC services in stablecoins for non-Europeans, right? So these are the ups and downs of being a regulated entity. So we're always trying to find a way, or be one or two steps ahead of what's happening, to be able to really bring the good product to the Bitcoin community.
How has the MiCA and all these regulations that happen in Europe affected the business? And what do you think about that?
I should be now very politically correct, right? If our regulators watch this interview, but and I have seen, like, Twitter is now, or X is now, full of stories about Binance not getting the license in Europe. So that's definitely a bummer for them. So and really, from the thousands of the kind of crypto companies in Europe, only a couple of hundreds got the license, including us, which is great. So I mean, on one hand, if we want to really operate in Europe and service our local customers in multiple countries around Europe, unfortunately, this is something you need to accept, right? So if we didn't have the license, we wouldn't be able to operate and provide the service to people in Europe. So it is what it is. We had to accept it. My personal take is, honestly, when we were going through the process, it felt like we're setting up a bank. I mean, the amount of paperwork, time, and resources and money that we had to really spend on the whole process was just crazy, right? It really stopped us from developing the product, and we just really had to focus on these things. So it's on one hand, I do understand that the regulators want to protect people from all these crypto scams that we've seen in the past, and they want to make sure that basically Europe, which is very kind of balkanized almost, I would say, right? So you have multiple countries, multiple regulations. So if you want to have one market, you need to have one set of rules, right? So that I absolutely accept and agree. At the same time, the benefit versus the bureaucracy behind, we could argue that maybe it's too much of an overhead. And I can't even imagine, like, if we were starting Firefish this year, let's say, the first thing we would have to go through is MiCA license. I mean, you want to build a product, you want to bring something good to the market. At the same time, you need to actually pass through all these regulatory and bureaucratic processes. So I think it might actually strangle or really maybe even kill the innovative sort of spirit inside of Europe with regards to really launching new crypto or Bitcoin projects. Because really, as I said, like at the very beginning, where your company is very small, you don't have the resources, you don't have the money, you really want to launch the product, and imagine you have to go through all this process. So I think that's a big downside. But as I said, like, it is what it is. We need to accept it. But we're obviously trying to do all the best to be compliant. At the same time, we're really focusing and trying to ship as good product as we can.
Yes, of course. That's the thing. Sometimes when regulation comes, all the paperwork stops the development. But if you want to, again, of course, we the Bitcoiners hate the regulators. But if we want Bitcoin to succeed and to grow, we need to integrate with the finance, the real finance world, let's say. And in that point, we need regulations. That's the thing. And talking about the product, the maximum LTV that we can get is 50%, or you can go even higher.
It is 50%, and we really did it deliberately. We don't want people to really just gamble, right? I mean, there's been a lot of cases. I know that there are platforms that enable you to go to like LTV 70%, and then they liquidate you at LTV 80%, whatever. So our proposition is that, let's be secure. Let's not just gamble. We know that Bitcoiners do not want to lose their Bitcoin, so we want to kind of prevent them from kind of taking too much of the risk. So the LTV is 50%. So basically, you need to deposit twice the amount of Bitcoin. And I think it's proven with time. Like we did have a couple of liquidations, unfortunately, in the past, when I think especially in February when Bitcoin started collapsing a lot. But we also have seen an incredible amount of top-ups, right? So if the price is going against you, if Bitcoin is falling, you can actually add more collateral. So your LTV is going back to more healthier levels, right? So we did have a couple of liquidations, but the vast majority of our users were topping up their collateral because they never want to lose it. It's Firefish is not for people who are here just to kind of leverage themselves to the tits and then potentially lose their Bitcoin. We even heard a couple of our users who came to the platform. They were like, 50%, that's too kind of restrictive. I want to have a higher LTV. I was like, yeah, okay, so sorry, that's not what we do. The guy went to one of the exchanges. He took a loan there with LTV 70%, and in 3 days he got liquidated, right? Then he got back to us. He was like, well, maybe I should have gone back to you and not be as aggressive as this, right? So really, I mean, the platform, yes, there are people who do the leverage, who actually, especially now in the bear market, they take a loan and buy more Bitcoin, right? Which is a very, very typical use case, but it's still in a very conservative way, right? So the LTV is 50%, and we're not planning to change it.
And of course, I can go for lower, because I always say, when I talk about loans in our channel, I always recommend, 50% is the maximum. If you can do less LTV, better, because we saw 126 and dropped to 57. So even the 50% is not so 100% safe. So I can do for less LTV, let's say 30%.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, the 50% is the maximum, or actually the minimum, or because LTV is kind of upside down. So 50% is the default, right? But if you want to deposit more Bitcoin, which a lot of our users do, I mean, when we were looking at the liquidation levels, there are some people who who have taken loans at the levels that Bitcoin would need to fall to like $4,000 for them to get liquidated, right? So they're very conservative. They do the math before, and that's what I always say to people who want to use the platform for the first time. Do your math and never use all the Bitcoin that you have on your hardware wallet, let's say, right? So always be prepared for the fact that Bitcoin price might fall even further. And if you have enough collateral on the side, you can always top up and you will never get liquidated, right? So people are very conservative. And that also shows, I mean, when it comes to the default ratio, right? So how many people actually didn't repay their loan? It might happen sometimes that you take a loan, you have money, you spend it, you don't have the cash flow again, you can't repay the loan. That actually happens. But this is really, really like a handful. We've processed, I think, almost 30,000 loans. And I think we had maybe 50, 60 defaults, like 60 times when people were not able to repay the loan. So that only proves that people that are using the platform do understand what they're doing. They are very conservative, and it's not a gambling sign, in other words, right?
No, I totally agree on that, and this is important. Through the process, take a loan. Imagine Bitcoin was 126, and I take a loan, 50% LTV, and then Bitcoin start going down. When and how the platform alerts the person so they want to top up, and how what can people do in order to not get liquidated?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And as we know, liquidations usually happen at night at 3 a.m. when you're sleeping, right? So you want to avoid such moments. So normally the liquidation actually on Firefish happens at LTV 95, right? So there's 5% sort of cushion that we take for the execution risk, basically. But normally the first margin call is at LTV 80, then 85, and 90, right? So there are 3 margin call levels. You get an email, you get an SMS, and at the same time, you can actually track the collateral health on the platform, right? So you see, whether it's well funded or it's getting to lower levels, right? So there is a number of margin calls. We always, even sometimes, we do a proactive reach out to our users who kind of didn't respond, or we see that they might have a big loan that is at risk of liquidation. So we're proactively trying to tell them, like, hey, are you sure you want to get liquidated? Price is falling, pay attention, all that. So we really, as I said, our basically philosophy is really never sell your Bitcoin and never get liquidated at the same time, right? So we want people to be safe and secure when it comes to this. And they always have you can top up collateral at absolutely any time, and it takes like a couple of seconds, literally, through the platform. Click top up collateral. Again, you will see the QR code, and and you just send your Bitcoin and you're sorted. Or alternatively, you can request an early repayment of your loan. And then you would just repay the loan. But again, that is tricky, because if it's happening at night, the bank transfer might not be processed and all that. So it's always better to have some Bitcoin, safely at home, and then send it if you need to go to top up your collateral.
Yes, that's another thing. And let's say I borrow against my Bitcoin. There is no liquidation issue whatsoever. Like, Bitcoin price start going up, like it's doing now. Imagine that, okay, I took a loan last week or 2 days ago when Bitcoin reached 57, 50%. So I would never be liquidated. And now Bitcoin start going up. Yeah. Anyways, let's say suddenly I got some fiat that I was not expecting. Can I repay the loan before?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the only thing you need to do is on the platform, just click early repayment request, right? Normally, if it's a peer-to-peer loan, we need to make sure that the lender is able to confirm that they've received the money, right? So basically, you just click early repayment request. When the lender approves, then you just send the money. In 99.9%, lenders accept because they received the money earlier, right? So it's not a problem. problem. And the process is really simple. Just as I said, click early repayment request, lender approves, and you can send the money. You see where to send the money. If it's stable coins, then obviously it's an address. If it's fiat, you see which bank basically address to send it to or bank number, and there you go. You can repay it very easily.
There is any penalty if I pay the loan early?
Not a penalty per se, but actually you need to repay the full amount, right? So if you take a 1-year loan and you want to repay it in let's say 3 months, then you need to repay the whole interest for the whole period, right? This is also primary to make it a little simpler from the process perspective, because then you would need to calculate the interest and things like this. And at the same time, many of the investors are actually committing the money for some period, right? So they're actually expecting that if I send money for 1 year, I want to get the interest. So now imagine then investors would be really, or the lenders would be kind of annoyed when people would be starting repaying the loans very early. They would need to go back to the platform, confirm these things, then reinvest again. So that's why we have enough liquidity, and that's why the interest rates are so low, because the investors, the lenders who have fiat money or stable coins, they have guaranteed interest for that whole period, right? So it's fixed, it's not even floating. Once we agree at the beginning for 1 year, I know that I'm going to receive the amount of money. It doesn't matter if it's in 3 months or 1 year, I'm guaranteed, right? So there are always trade-offs, of course. We are also, of course, all the time kind of reviewing all these processes and basically the model itself. But at this point in time, you would need to repay basically the whole amount.
Yes, totally. No, totally agree on that, because imagine of course, we are Bitcoiners and we see the Bitcoiner side, but the other person say, okay, I put this money and I want to get X amount back. So
yeah.
It's not worth if someone's, okay, I pay now. No, I was expecting 1 year and I wanted this money. So that's the point.
And you also have bad experience. Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I am investor, I would not be happy if someone cancels the loan early. That's the thing. I'm talking about rates. I know that the rates are like in a marketplace. In which range are the rates fluctuating?
So I would say the vast majority of flows, or the biggest demand we have is on euros, right? So on euros, right now you can borrow for 3 months at like 5%, and as you go longer tenors, the interest rate increase, right? So I think for 1 year or 2 years, actually, the interest rate would be around 9-10%, right? Many people do it actually that way, that they take actually a short loan, like 3 months for 5%, and then every 3 months they roll it over, right? So altogether, and it's 5% per annum, right? It's not for 3 months, it's per annum, right? So it's only 1/4 of 5%. So if you have enough stack, you can actually kind of do this trick that you are actually taking the cheaper loans and roll it over. Or, if you really want to have peace of mind, just take the longer term loan and you would pay little higher interest rate. I mean, looking at the data historically, the top we had was around 15% on euros as well. Most of the other currencies kind of follow suit, but really the rates fell by 5, 6, 7% in certain cases. So that's the beauty of the open marketplace and beauty of the traction. Like when you're attracting more liquidity, it kind of has this snowball effect, and people are coming back. Some investors, of course, who were taking the deals at 15, 14, 13%, now they're annoyed, like, 7%, I don't like it anymore. So they're comparing actually the previous rates with the current rates. But we always tell them, like, okay, so show me an alternative that is so secure, that is so liquid, that is over collateralized, backed by Bitcoin, that can be liquidated 24/7, and that gives you 7%, right, on euros or stable coins or something like that. There's no other asset, I would say, that gives you such a great yield.
No, of course. Imagine, plus your money is secure, because if you put in a bank, or let's say if you go and buy some bonds or whatever, these bonds can be defaulted. They have no collateral. Here you have the biggest and strongest collateral ever, and you know that you will be paid back. So
absolutely.
And what do you think, why the rates are dropping? Because of the bear market, or because this instrument is being more massive? And of course, when the market becomes massive, rates go lower?
I think it's both ways, right? So as also as you said, like the loans are over collateralized, right? So risk of not getting your money back. So interest rates, in other words, on instruments like on bonds, on whatever other money market instruments, usually also reflect the credit risk, right? So the counterparty risk, like what if I don't get the money back, right? So for example, in bond markets, if a small country somewhere in Africa wants to borrow US dollars, they would really have to pay like, 15, 20%, like Argentinian bonds, right? Or whatever, because there's a big risk for the lenders, for the investors, that they will not get the money back. So that's why they would be charging higher interest rates. With Bitcoin-backed loans, where your loans are actually over-collateralized, right? So there's something backing your loan, the risk is much, much, much lower, right? So we think that the kind of fair interest rates on Bitcoin-backed loans should be somewhere around the central bank rates, because the risk profile is there. Then obviously from the investor's perspective, you always consider the alternatives that you have, right? So a risk reward basically. So if for example Bitcoin-backed loans would be yielding 3-4%, me as the investor, the inflation is 5-6%, I would be looking for something with a higher yield, let's say, right? Even the risk might be a little higher, but overall, the risk profile of Bitcoin-backed loans is really something that should be driving the rates lower. And secondly, for us in the marketplace, I think it's also the function of the traction. More and more people know about this option. More and more investors, in particular, have tried it already. They got their first investments back, so they kind of keep on doing more and more. And we see it also from the data on the platform that basically almost 85% of borrowers and lenders come for a second deal, right? So they tried once, then they go second time, third time, and all that. And the history of or the turnover that actually they process on the platform, invested or borrowed, is actually increasing with their lifetime on the platform. So it's a matter of both things: the kind of the structure of Bitcoin-backed loans, as well as the traction, and as well as the the fact that we have more and more users on the platform, which obviously increases the liquidity. And also, we didn't have any investor that wouldn't be repaid, even if there are defaults. Bitcoin is sold in the market. That's the beauty of it. If you take a mortgage, you borrow from me, for example. I'm the bank. The collateral is your house. You stopped paying, then I would need to sell your house, and it's a headache to sell a real estate, or other assets. With Bitcoin, you can send the Bitcoin collateral like this, and the money is there, right? So I think the good experience of the users on the platform also are a big function on why the rates are going lower and why the liquidity is increasing.
And from the lender point of view, imagine either the loan is not paid or there is a liquidation because of the price of Bitcoin drops. If I'm a lender, I get only money, or I can choose to get Bitcoin.
That's the beauty of it, right? So as I mentioned at the very beginning, we also wanted to bring people who are not Bitcoin native. So there are two ways of liquidating of the collateral. One is what we call self-liquidation. In that case, you as the lender, you will receive the collateral, right? So you basically get Bitcoin with 5% discount. So if you send, let's say, $1,000 somewhere, and it gets liquidated, then actually you get back, just as an example, you will get back Bitcoin at 950, right? So with this 5%, 995, with the 5% difference. So basically you bought Bitcoin at a cheaper level. But also there's what we call Firefish liquidation. So that's for people who are not Bitcoin native, but they want to invest in Bitcoin-backed loans. They don't know how to liquidate Bitcoin, or they don't have even a wallet, whatever. For these people, we have the service where Firefish actually sells Bitcoin in the marketplace or in the market globally, and you get your money back, right? So you have both options. Natively, Bitcoiners, they love the fact that they can get Bitcoin once the liquidation happens. The split is, I would say, roughly 60-40 or 70-30, right? So 70% people prefer Firefish liquidation because it's more convenient. Sometimes you just don't want additional Bitcoin for whatever reason, if that happens. But we have many Bitcoiners who also have fiat and they're investing on the platform because, we still live in fiat economies. The inflation is crazy, and if you want to protect the purchasing power, or at least minimize the impact of inflation, it's really good to invest in instruments that are giving you a higher yield than let's say the bank accounts or treasury notes and stuff like this. So for these kind of people, Bitcoiners, they really, most of them really appreciate the self-liquidation mode when they receive Bitcoin in case of default.
Yes, this is another good question. And how have you seen the market this year? Because we went from all-time high, we were for thinking about super cycle, and now we see Bitcoin. Most of the people think it's gonna go to 40K, and of course, this brings. I know that me as a Bitcoiner, I say of course, price doesn't care. One BTC is one BTC. But when you are building something like us, that we are creating content, you that you are creating a company, bear markets, like the hype is gone, and you don't see a lot of interaction. How do you see this year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. Like, to be fairly honest, like as I said, like part of the use case and I'll just I'll go one step back. I mean, just recently, a couple of weeks ago, there was BTC Prague, which is the biggest European conference. And when we were talking, people, the mood was still kind of positive when it comes to Bitcoin overall, but people were a little depressed because imagine, really, you bought it at 120, 126, and then suddenly it's 50 or 60, whatever. So you lost half of your investment. But of course, the long-term preference, long-time horizon, that's a very important point. A lot of companies have been complaining, a lot of users that came into crypto, retail in particular, that came into crypto or Bitcoin for the money. They saw that there's the bear market has started. Now they discovered OpenAI and SpaceX and Polymarket, right? So they found more attractive sort of investment or gambling opportunities. So a lot of companies in the market do feel the bear market, the impact of the bear market, less traction, less users and all that. For us, paradoxically, as I mentioned, a lot of people really like to take the loans to get more Bitcoin. Yes, it's leverage. Yes, some people might find it reckless, but we did have actually a couple of very good months when we had a lot of activity. Actually, the activity on the platform is not falling, which is really great. I mean, of course, we're trying to expand. At the same time, I think it's also about the real use case, right? So we are not a trading platform, right? So you are not kind of using Firefish because you want to get richer or whatever. Vast majority of the users that come to platform have a particular use case, right? As we discussed, I want to invest, I want to go for holidays, I want to buy something, I need to pay taxes, for example, or I want to buy more Bitcoin, right? So these kind of use cases. So that's why, even though we've seen maybe a little less inflow of new users for obvious reasons, the activity on the platform is still good. Last month was excellent. February as well, when the price was going lower, was really good. So overall, for our platform, what is paradoxical is we don't like the fact when Bitcoin doesn't move, right? So if it goes up or it goes down, it's good, good overall.
Yes, I was telling a friend the other day because, of course, when I see my channel, in my channel, for example, the biggest our audience or the best views are either the day Bitcoin crashed,
yes,
or the day Bitcoin went up. But when it's moving sideways, nobody cares, because
no one cares.
I think that for example, for me, it's like, okay, when people goes up, when Bitcoin goes up, all the people want to understand Bitcoin and why it's going up. And the same when it's go down, why crash? Sometimes there is no explanation, but you have a lot of views. And what you say about I think that this is a good moment for, of course, we don't promote gambling or whatever, right? But if you want to do if you like a little bit of let's say adrenaline, now is a good moment that you can, of course, not with your stock, but imagine that you have, okay, I have money and I will buy Bitcoin. I know that Bitcoin is in deep. In my case, I'm still repeating since February. 60K was the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Probably we can go a little bit lower, like 55 something, but for me, 60K is the bottom. Imagine that I have a stack I want to buy, and I say, okay, I can get more Bitcoin. Now is the bottom. I can use my Bitcoin to generate an extra amount that in the future, probably I can get it for free, because that's the thing. Of course, it's not, of course, don't do that. It's like some people say, mortgage your home. If it's your house that you live with your family, of course, not. But if it's an apartment that you have, that you bought, and it's not where you live, now probably is the moment that is good for taking more risks. Of course, this is not financial advice. But
not financial advice, yes.
But if there is a moment where you, of course, taking risk, but not taking risk is not the same of being stupid. That's the thing. Because if today I want to grow my channel and start doing parkour around Hong Kong, for me it's being stupid, because I will get destroyed. But again, like for me, now is a good time for taking risks, because when the market is at its bottom or near the bottom, it's a good time to take risks. I don't know what you think.
No, listen, absolutely. And like, again, to your point, not the financial advice, and I'm definitely not promoting gambling. But even from actually trading perspective, right? Bitcoin can go only to zero or to infinitum, right? So like, it can only fall from 50K to zero, right? So the lower it gets, the lower your risk basically is, right? So that's why, and that's a common strategy in trading, right? So the best positions, the accumulation phase usually comes in the bear market, right? Because at the bottoms, you never know whether 59 is the bottom or 45, whatever, but your downside risk is definitely lower than if you're taking a loan at 120, right? Because, you know, the downside is much bigger. So that's why really bear markets, and we see it as I mentioned, like on our platform, the bear markets or the bottoms are good for accumulation, and that's why, you know, a lot of people are really trying to not super leverage themselves, but, you know, do your calculation. You know, it's a calculated risk basically, right? So always make sure that the strategy that you're applying, you know, you have valid reasons why you're doing it. Just don't go, you know, YOLO, you know, full on. Do your calculation, and then really bear markets are maybe the best time to accumulate the assets, right? So, and that the same applies obviously to Bitcoin.
Yeah, because imagine, let's say you buy one Bitcoin, you have 60K, you buy one Bitcoin, you borrow another 30K and buy half Bitcoin. Imagine what can happen, let's say, in 1 year when Bitcoin goes back, gets to a new all-time high. You can repay your loan and get more Bitcoin for free. That's the thing. But again, of course, nothing is financial advice. I always encourage people, don't overcomplicate. Just the best way is doing DCA. But anyways, that's a good thing. I'm talking about the future of Firefish. What are the plans for the future?
Yeah, so look, I think, so we launched the platform roughly 2 years ago, right? And really, we have users now from 75 countries around the world. So we kept on adding, you know, new currencies, you know, some of the new features and all that. But I think the key takeaway for us is that the use case of you know, collateralizing Bitcoin in a very secure, non-custodial way is definitely something that Bitcoiners appreciate, right? So it's a tool for them to really never sell their Bitcoin, you know, get a loan and, you know, cover the costs or whatever you want to do with the money, but not giving up on the asset that you really believe will perform well in the future. So of course, for us, you know, we don't want to stick to the plain vanilla, you know, loans as we have on the platform right now. As I mentioned, we also integrated the instant loans. On the flip side of the instant loans, it's what we call auto invest. So if you're an investor, a big one, you have, you know, let's say 100K, 200K, 500K, and you don't want to go to the platform every day and click and choose the deals and process it manually, you can actually use the auto invest feature to deploy your money, and the platform will automatically then basically cover the loans, and you will be just receiving the proceeds from those loans, right? So that's also something we've built. We've also actually launched a investment fund, right? So for institutions who are not able to, who want to participate in the Bitcoin backed credit market, but can't kind of have a peer-to-peer loan on their balance sheet, they can actually invest in a fund, right? And the solo mandate of the fund is to invest in Bitcoin-backed loans, right? So it's a vehicle that high net worth individuals, family offices, institutions can use. So we want to kind of broaden this thing. The very important, I would say, the first two very important updates on the platform that are coming up very soon. One, I think, in a week and a half or 2 weeks, which is something what we call embedded accounts. So you will have your bank account on the platform, right? So right now, if we have a deal, you're the borrower, I'm the lender. I will be sending money from my bank account to your bank account, right? So between our two banks, which can sometimes cause questions by the banks, like, hey, who is this guy who is sending you money? So you need to prove that I've just taken a peer-to-peer loan, and that's it. But to make the life much easier, you're gonna be able to have your own bank account on the platform. So the loans will be basically settled instantly, and when you're gonna be retrieving the money from the platform, it will be basically from your account to your account, right? So there will be no third party in between. You will be basically sending money from an account under your own name, right? So that's a very important feature, which will really fix a lot of kind of hiccups that are there with when it comes to peer-to-peer lending. And the other one is the rollover, as we discussed, right? Which is really something that people are waiting for. They want to have the rollover feature and all that. On top of that, we have a bunch of additional features on the roadmap. I don't wanna kind of jinx it or speak about these things too early, but we'll definitely keep everybody updated, as we go. Some of these features, as we discussed, potentially the non-KYC service for outside of Europe, basically user base, would be something that we really want to focus on, right? So there's a lot of additional things that we can build on top of the basic plain vanilla, I would say, lending. And as I said, I think it's all about basically creating a product set for both borrowers and lenders, so they can really benefit from what Bitcoin as the collateral brings to them, right? So that's the bottom line.
Yes, and always there is room for you coming back again to our podcast in the future to comment the new features that Firefish has, because I never used Firefish, but it seems that it's an amazing tool. And also I met one of the guys, I don't remember his name. I think that is the German guy. I was smoking with him in Argentina.
Yes. In Argentina, yes.
Smoking cigars, not illegal thing. Smoking cigars. I also meet Loscu, not meet, but I record a podcast with Loscu from Spain and Jackie from Argentina, that they are collaborating with Firefish. So I feel I see an amazing tool, and also in all this new world of Bitcoin-backed loans and Bitcoin finance, it's really good when you choose a company that is a company run by Bitcoiners, that they understand
Absolutely.
what we do, what we want, how precious and valuable for us is Bitcoin. So I always recommend, when someone asks me for a Bitcoin-backed loan, check if they are not rehypothecating that. And even though if they say that they are not rehypothecating, but when there is something that is transparent, run by Bitcoiners, fully open source, I think that is really good for the space, and for more Bitcoiners using Bitcoin as a collateral, as a financial tool. And talking about the future of, first, the general Bitcoin-backed loans space. What do you think about it?
Yeah, listen, I think it is becoming a very big topic, right? Because as the market is maturing, right, and hate it or love it, the fact that we have ETFs, there's new regulation. Bitcoin is not the same thing as it was, let's say, 3-5 years ago, right? When it was the cypherpunk thing, or the governments were looking at Bitcoin as a terrorist financing tool and things like that. So the market is maturing. The perception on Bitcoin has dramatically changed. Now everybody's looking at it like, okay, so now we have this new digital currency. So what are the use cases? On-ramp, trading, things like that. And I think just like with any other asset, and that's what happened to real estate as well, right? Once you build the credit infrastructure, which means mortgages with all the frameworks behind it, suddenly the mortgages became, or a real estate became, the biggest credit instrument in the world, right? So I think this is something that will inevitably happen to Bitcoin. We see a lot of new projects actually popping up. There are different models, as I mentioned. Yes, you have the DeFi kind of world where you can collateralize your Bitcoin. I wouldn't personally go there, because it's you need to really trust some protocol wrapping it and bridging it and things like that. We see hacks on daily basis. Then there are projects that are basically focusing on centralized lending, right? So you send Bitcoin to them, to their custody, they send you the money, and we went the other path, which is non-custodial marketplace, right, where Bitcoin is locked directly on chain, and we are just facilitating basically the flows between borrowers and lenders. So there are different models, different ways. So to your point, I would always recommend people to do their own research. Is there rehab education? Is it transparent? Is it open source? Who is running the company? Things like that. But overall, I think, and we see it in the market, that Bitcoin-backed lending is really becoming a much bigger tool than, or basically market than before, to the point where already some of the banks started considering, providing loans against Bitcoin, right? So if you have a bank account, first, obviously, the bank would enable you to send Bitcoin. They will be custodying your Bitcoin. I don't know who would do that, but there might be people who are kind of lazy with self-custody and all that. And then you could actually borrow against your Bitcoin with the bank, right? So more and more players are looking into this market. It is a hot topic, I would say, and the market would definitely become bigger. I think the biggest problem with Bitcoin-backed lending were two things. One is the previous models. Again, BlockFi, Celsius, rest in peace. These kind of platforms that basically disappeared. One of them was actually an outright Ponzi scheme. The other one was actually, whatever. I'm not going to comment on those. So people really have a very bad experience with these kind of models. And the other challenge is obviously the liquidation risk, right? So the volatility of Bitcoin. So the fact that some of the platforms enable people to borrow at LTV 70-80%, that's to me really literally almost gambling, right? So once you facilitate, or you kind of remove these two risks, create a transparent system, transparent platform actually that helps you to borrow against your Bitcoin, where you see at all times where your Bitcoin sits, just like on our platform. I think it's just a matter of time when these markets will balloon even further.
Excellent. And to our audience, why should someone get a loan using Firefish?
Well, as I always say, use Bitcoin-backed lending whenever you have a real need, right? Don't do it just because you want to gamble. Don't do it just because someone told you to do so. Credit is a great tool, but it can be also risky, right? So I always say, do your math before, calculate the risk. Do you have enough stack? Will you be able to repay the loan and things like this? So overall, in terms of the use cases, as we discussed, there were even, last year, actually, two people came to our office. They were like, we're looking for Firefish. And like, who are you? And they were like, hey, we're your users. We just wanted to, and they gave us like a couple of bottles of beer. Like, this is from our brewery. We just wanted to thank you because thanks to Firefish, we didn't have to sell our Bitcoin. We were able to finish our house, because the bank didn't want to give us any more credit and all that, right? So there are real use cases. Another guy who is paid in Bitcoin, right? He's a developer and his income is in Bitcoin. And to fund his real life needs, right, buy a car or, go for holidays with the family, he needed fiat, right? So instead of selling Bitcoin, he was like, well, actually now, thanks to you Firefish guys, I'm funding my life, I'm taking loans, and never selling my Bitcoin, right? So the whole point is, if you have funding needs, if you need some money, and your only option is to sell your Bitcoin, really consider looking at Bitcoin-backed loans, because that could be a very, very good tool. Last but not the least, as I mentioned, as we've discussed in the details, if you want to get your heartbeat a little higher and leverage yourself, you can also use Bitcoin-backed loans to acquire more Bitcoin, especially in the bear markets, which might be a good strategy. But again, not financial advice. Really do the math beforehand. It might be really tricky. So coming back to my point, whenever you have a use case and your only option is selling your Bitcoin, consider Bitcoin-backed loans and potentially our platform, because that might be a good option for you to not sell it, but keep on funding, whatever needs you have. And on the flip side, you have the investors. If you're sitting on fiat, if you're sitting on stable coins, they're earning nothing, in a bank or on whatever protocol you use for yields. Look at the marketplace. The interest rates are much more attractive than many other sort of opportunities or alternatives that you might have in the market. So if you don't want your fiat to rot in the bank, I think Bitcoin-backed loans are an excellent opportunity for you to especially protect yourself from the inflation.
Excellent. And the last two questions. The first one is, how do you see the future of Bitcoin?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? I think the connection broke a little.
Yes. How do you see the future of Bitcoin?
How do I see the future of Bitcoin? Well, if I didn't see the future of Bitcoin positively, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now, right? As I said at the very beginning, like in general, people have different sort of expectations or use cases when it comes to Bitcoin, right? So for some, it's a store of values. For some, it's freedom. For others, it's payments. For others, it's just, a way of getting out of the system, that we live in. So I'm actually very, very positive, because I'm looking at Bitcoin really from much broader perspective than just, a digital money. And it's something that is super unique. I really love the decentralization attribute of it, that there's not the single entity that can switch it off and tell you to get out, as I experienced on in my own life in the past. So I'm not actually that much concerned about the price action. Bitcoin will always play a super important part in my own life, and I think the more people study what it actually is, how it works, the more they can actually benefit from the unique attributes of Bitcoin overall, right? So I'm very positive. I don't want to be giving you 100 years sort of expectations on what's going to happen with the price or the overall adoption. I think the one, actually two additional things that I really love about Bitcoin is the community, really, for whatever cliche it sounds. Whichever conference you go to, you mentioned Jackie, for example, or Law School, these people I never knew before. They're excellent people, very humble, very honest, so it's really always a pleasure meeting Bitcoiners. And there was another thing that I wanted to say and I forgot. Whatever. I just wanted to say that I think Bitcoin will really play a very important role. Definitely does in my life, and I really hope more and more people will discover it.
Excellent. And the last question: if you had the chance to sit down with Satoshi Nakamoto, what would you ask, or what would you say to him, to her, or to them?
I would just shake his hand and thank him or her or them, whoever that is, and then just leave. I really don't wanna, this is something that we were given somehow, something that is super unique, something that no one can take from us. So I don't want to ask why, what, who, why, what, things like this. I would really just thank Satoshi for Bitcoin, and that's that. I wouldn't really want to go into any more discussions, right? It's just gratitude, and that's it.
Excellent. Well, Igor, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Anything else you want to add, and how people can contact you?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion. Well, people can find us on firefish.io. Just go to the website. You can register, check out the platform. It's really, I think, very, very easy to use. Or you can also follow us, especially on X, firefish_io. If you have any feedback or want to ask us any questions, like, let us know. There are multiple ways of doing it. So check it out, and we really hope to see you on platform, yourselves including, very soon.
Thank you very much, Igor, for your time, and I wish you the best. Have a great day, and hope we can speak in the future about the new features of Firefish.
Absolutely. We'll be looking forward to it, and thanks again for having me.
Yes, thank you very much for your time, and thank you to everyone who is on the other side. If you like the episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media, also follow our guests, because doing so, you help us a lot to paint the world orange. Share this episode with the people you love. Share this episode with the people you hate, because we must reach 8 billion people and give them the orange pill. See you in the next episode. Stay humble, stack sats, and remember, we are all Satoshi.